Okay, let's unpack this deep dive into vocal learning because we are talking about a total shakeup in how we understand, well, the animal model that has defined our study of human speech, the zebra finch.
It's hard to overstate how central the zebra finch is. I mean, it is essentially the white mouse of vocal research.
Right.
And for decades, the entire model of how they learned was rock solid. They hear a template song from their tutor, they memorize it,
And then they just practice.
they just practice. They spend the next couple of months practicing their immature song, what we call subsong, until their motor output exactly matches that acoustic memory.
So the classic process is pure imitation. It's sort of a mechanical matchup between what the ear hears and what the bird's syrinx, their vocal organ, can produce.
Exactly. And in that framework, the social stuff, whether the tutor was physically present or if a female was interested,
That was all just seen as a bonus.
a bonus, yeah, just boosting motivation.
Yeah.
It wasn't considered the core learning mechanism. The core belief was that the mechanism was strictly sensory motor. But our sources today detail this really revolutionary study. It provides the first experimental evidence to challenge this decades-old assumption. It shows a non-imitative mechanism that's not just a bonus, but absolutely crucial.
And this is where we have to establish the human parallel, because for you listening, this isn't just about birds. It really changes how we view ourselves.
It's fascinating. The finch is now confirmed to be closer to us than we ever thought. Think about human infants.
Right, the babbling stage.
Exactly. If an infant babbles, their vocal learning accelerates drastically, but only if they receive active contingent social feedback. A parent smiles or says yes immediately after a vocalization.
Meaning the response is timed perfectly to their action.
Perfectly timed. Now, if you take a control group of infants and give them the exact same amount of parental attention, but that attention is not contingent.
So the timing is random.
Totally random, yeah. It's not tied to the infant's own babbling. Those infants simply do not show the same crucial early vocal development. They don't progress.
Wow. So that highlights the absolute power of the social mechanism over just, mere exposure.
It does. And until now, we generally thought of that socially guided learning as being pretty rare, maybe even atypical in the non-human animal kingdom, especially in a dedicated vocal imitator like the finch.
You'd think they wouldn't need it.
That's right. The learning mechanism you just described is called socially guided vocal learning, basically using social feedback on immature sounds to shape the final adult version.
And traditional songbird research was just so fixated on memorization and the sensory motor part of it.
It was. So the early subsong was largely dismissed as just motor practice. If you're just trying to hit the template notes, why would social input matter during the practice phase?
It makes sense to overlook it if your model is only about muscle memory and hitting the right frequency. But if the finch is supposed to be this perfect human model, we should have expected to find this, shouldn't we?
We should. But before this study, there was only one experimentally confirmed example in all of songbirds, and it was considered kind of an evolutionary quirk.
And that quirk is the brown-headed cowbird.
Correct. The cowbird is a brood parasite.
They lay their eggs in other birds' nests.
Exactly. So juvenile cowbirds are raised without ever hearing an adult male cowbird sing. They have no model to imitate, yet they still manage to develop a mature, reproductively potent song.
So they can't rely on imitation. They have to crowdsource the answer.
They absolutely do. They rely entirely on the female's reaction. Juvenile males sing, and the non-singing adult females listen and respond selectively.
How do they do that?
They perform a specific visual cue. It's a rapid lateral wing movement called a wing stroke, and they only do it for the more mature-sounding song elements.
So the male sees that and thinks, aha, that's the stuff.
Precisely. He then incorporates those rewarded song elements into his final adult song. The female feedback essentially tells the male that is what a functional cowbird song sounds like.
That's an amazing adaptation. But the zebra finch isn't a parasite. It has its parents, it has a tutor, it should be the classic imitator.
It should be. But even in finches, the data has always hinted that social context is essential. They need a live tutor, not a recording, for a species-typical song.
Right.
And they attend really strongly to visual cues. If a juvenile is in visual isolation, its song development is impaired, even if it can hear the tutor perfectly.
So something more was going on.
It suggested that social interaction was doing more than just encouraging them to practice. It was shaping how they practiced, We just hadn't experimentally isolated that shaping mechanism until now.
Okay, let's get into this experimental setup because the genius here is really in the controls. They had to completely isolate the effect of social contingency.
That was the key. They used 9 pairs of juvenile male finch genetic brothers.
Brothers to control for genetics.
Exactly. They were raised together until 35 days post-hatch, so they had the same early environment. And they all heard their father's song, the tutor song, during that crucial memorization period.
So the template is already in their heads. The question now is, what helps them refine their practice attempts to actually match that internal template?
Right. So they isolated the brothers and put them into individual sound-attenuated chambers. And they stayed there for the next 25 days.
Okay, so from day 35 to day 60.
Which is their crucial sensoromotor practice time. This is where the subsong starts turning into the real adult song.
And the reward. They needed something non-vocal, non-acoustic, and perfectly timed.
And they found the perfect thing. They used video playback of a life-sized adult female finch performing a very specific non-vocal behavior. It's known as the fluff-up.
A fluff-up. I love that.
It is exactly what it sounds like. A quick erection of the body feathers, followed by this tiny, rapid shake. It's a known female signal of interest, usually in response to a complex, attractive male song.
So it's a quick visual. I like that, right?
A pure, non-vocal affirmation. The stimulus was short, just 3 seconds. Now, to test the hypothesis of contingency, they set up the 2 conditions using the brothers.
Tell us about the contingent condition first.
The contingent condition, or CC bird, was the experimental subject. Whenever that CC bird sang an immature song motif, an experimenter was there to immediately trigger that 3-second fluff-up video.
So the visual affirmation was directly and reliably tied to the bird's own vocal behavior.
Right. On average, about 60% of their song bouts got this immediate reward.
And this is where the yoked control comes in. This is the really elegant part of the experiment. Why not just have a control group that got no video at all?
Because that wouldn't be a true control. They needed to rule out the possibility that just seeing the video or the simple act of practicing was the driver.
Ah, I see.
So the yoked control, or YC brother, received an identical and simultaneous video playback. But the timing was based entirely on what the CC brother was doing.
Okay, wait. So the YC bird saw the exact same number of fluff-ups for the same duration as his brother. But for the YC bird, the fluff-up was totally random with respect to his own song attempt.
Precisely. It was just meaningless visual noise from his perspective. It completely divorced the social reward from the vocal effort.
That is a brilliant control.
It is. And critically, both the CC and YC birds sing at similar rates and for similar durations. So they ruled out the idea that the reward simply motivated the CC birds to practice more. The only difference was whether the social feedback had meaning.
Okay, that's a very clean setup. So what happened when they grew up? The YC birds had the acoustic memory and the practice time. The CC birds had all that, plus the timed visual affirmation.
The results were dramatic. They measured the songs at 90 days post-hatch when the songs were crystallized. The CC birds, who got the timed fluff-ups, incorporated significantly more of their father's song material.
How significant are we talking? Give us the numbers that tell the story.
Quantitatively, the difference was striking. The CC birds achieved a mean acoustic percent similarity to the tutor of over 65%.
Wow.
And to give you some context for that number, that level of accuracy is comparable to finches raised in the most optimal natural environment with both parents present and interacting.
So they achieved natural success through completely artificial but perfectly timed feedback.
Yes. And the yoked bird, despite hearing Dad's song, getting the same visual stimulus, and practicing just as much.
Failed to reach the same accuracy.
Absolutely. 8 out of the 9 sibling pairs showed the CC brother outperforming the YC counterpart. The YC birds, who were relying purely on that internal sensoromotor practice model, simply could not refine their song accurately.
So the acoustic memory alone was not enough.
It was insufficient without that social reinforcement loop.
That fundamentally changes the model. It wasn't enough to just practice the notes. They needed external verification that the notes they were practicing were the right notes.
And you could actually see this failure in the structure of the YC songs. When they analyzed the spectral features, the YC subjects had a significantly broader distribution of entropy in their final songs.
Okay, let's clarify that for the listener. When we talk about entropy in song structure, what does that indicate?
Entropy is basically a measure of acoustic messiness or unpredictability. High entropy means the acoustic structure is disordered, unpredictable, less clean. The YC songs were structurally more atypical. They hadn't successfully filtered out the practice noise to crystallize that clean template. The CC birds, though, had filtered their practice through the social feedback, and the result was a cleaner, more typical song structure.
And there's a great psychological detail here, too. The study linked the bird's own internal reaction to the external cue. The feedback wasn't just passive information.
That's right. Within that contingent group, the birds that showed more arousal behaviors themselves, like doing their own little fluff-ups or beak wipes during the playback sessions,
They were getting into it.
they were. And they showed a positive correlation with achieving the highest final song similarity. This means the fluff-up wasn't just visual information. It was a potent social reward that increased the bird's internal engagement and ultimately drove the quality of the learning.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. We now know the mechanism. Non-vocal social feedback helps refine the song. So what is happening under the hood? How is a visual fluff-up talking to the part of the brain that controls song motor output?
This is the critical neurobiological connection. The study confirms that the finch is now using a human-like learning strategy, linking social motivation directly to vocal learning.
It's not just about repetition, it's about reinforcement.
Exactly. The contingent social feedback serves to reinforce the memorized song representation inside the brain.
And that reinforcement has a physical basis in the brain's reward circuits.
It absolutely does. We know that in songbirds, social feedback is intrinsically rewarding. It's associated with increases in dopamine in the striatum. More specifically, social tutoring, as opposed to just passively hearing a recording, elevates activity in the ventral tegmental area, or VTA.
The VTA, that's a famous area in human neurobiology. That's the dopamine production center, the reward hub.
It is. In the finch, this VTA-generated dopamine acts via catecholaminergic neurons, and these project to a crucial motor control area known as Area X.
And Area X is where the bird typically measures its vocal errors. It's the quality control center for the song.
It is. So, if I'm understanding correctly, when the CC bird sang a note that matched the template, the timed fluff-up essentially gives the VTA a dopamine hit. That dopamine hit acts like a big, rewarding stamp of approval that tells Area X that specific motor sequence you just executed is socially potent, reinforce that memory trace, and discard the rest.
That is precisely the learning loop. It wasn't just motor practice, it was rewarded motor practice. It linked social acceptance directly to acoustic accuracy.
And that just dramatically strengthens the finch model for human speech.
It does because it confirms that these highly social species like humans, marmosets, and finches use this specific strategy to rapidly correct immature vocalizations.
And if we look at those species, humans, marmosets, cowbirds, and now finches, they all share key life history traits that make this socially guided learning so necessary.
They do. They're all socially gregarious. They use their learned vocalizations to maintain social bonds or attract mates. And crucially, they all have a long period of vocal development where they're producing immature sounds before the final crystallized form.
That window of immature vocal output is the perfect target for contingent social feedback to act upon.
So the overall message here is that the zebra finch isn't just a little recording device playing back a memorized tune. It's a sophisticated, sensitive social learner whose success is entirely dependent on the timely, non-vocal affirmation of its peer group. The fluff-up dictates the final song.
And, this realization actually cleans up some confusing results from past research.
How so?
We mentioned earlier that researchers struggle to get finches to learn from taped songs unless they used a weird trick. Having the bird press a key to trigger the taped song playback, passive listening failed, key pressing succeeded.
The key pressing paradigm. I always thought that was just a motivational trick to get the bird to pay attention to the recording.
It was more than that. Our sources suggest that the key pressing contingency, the act of the subject taking an action and receiving an immediate acoustic result, served as an artificial proxy for social reward.
Ah, so it was a contingency all along.
It linked the bird's internal action to a contingent outcome, lighting up that VTA Area X loop, even if the outcome was just a recording. The mechanism was the contingency, not just the acoustic exposure itself.
That is a phenomenal piece of insight that ties decades of weird research together. We've redefined the central animal model for human speech acquisition simply by recognizing the power of a timely, non-vocal cue.
Which really raises an important question for you to consider.
Yeah.
Given this robust effect found in the zebra finch, a species that was considered the epitome of the purely imitative mechanical learner, how widespread might socially guided vocal learning actually be across the animal kingdom? And what subtle non-vocal cues might we be overlooking as fundamental drivers of communication development in species we currently think of as non-learners?